Jiang Xianer said coldly and raised his hand to look at his watch. However, her heart has been beating nervously and plopping. Manager Dong's arrogance immediately decreased by half. My order said to be delivered on the 18th, but it was on the 28th. It hasn't been sent to me yet. The contract you signed with Shengtian Group? Jiang Xianer asked. Yes. The contract says that it will be delivered to the place designated by me on the 18th, which is my warehouse. Manager Dong replied confidently. Who signed the contract with you at that time? If it didn't arrive in time, just contact him. Why bother to make trouble in the company? Jiang Xianer is really confused now. Is there something wrong with Manager Dong? I called him and he said he quit, so the previous list was ignored. Then I'll contact him again and he'll become an empty number. Manager Dong looks very aggrieved. Did he tell you the contact information of others, or who you should call in the future? Jiang Xianer asked again. Of course not. If he had said it, I would have found someone. How could I come to you now? Manager Dong stared. Is there something wrong with your mind? Jiang Xianer took a deep breath, then tell me the name of that person. I'll check which department of the company he belongs to, and then find someone to be responsible for you. Manager Dong reluctantly took out a piece of paper from his bag and said a name for a long time. After that, the restaurant was quiet again. Jiang Xianer waited for a long time, but no one said that this person was an employee of his department before. Are you sure you signed the contract with Shengtian Group? Jiang Xianer spoke awkwardly. Nonsense. What am I doing here? Am I a fool? Dong Jingli jumped angrily. I don't believe it. I'll show you the contract. With that, he took out another contract from his bag and angrily stuffed it into Jiang Xianer. Jiang Xianer opened the contract while wondering how no one knew the person who signed the contract with Manager Dong. She glanced roughly, but was attracted by the last few lines. Manager Dong, where is the receiving place you designated? Warehouse 3 2nd Street, Daidu Huan District. Any questions? Manager Dong said angrily. What you wrote in this contract is Warehouse 3 2nd Street, Hadong District, Daidu, not Huan District. Jiang Xianer pointed out a line of small characters on it and showed it to Manager Dong. What? Manager Dong came over and looked at it. He turned on his mobile phone again, as if he had checked something. After checking it, his face turned red with the naked eye. Manager Dong. I'm afraid you have made a mistake. Jiang Xianer said sincerely, biting his tongue secretly to prevent himself from laughing. After all, Manager Dong's red face does look very funny. After you deliver it, no one will accept it. Can you just leave it there? Don't ask the receiver, right? After holding for a long time, Manager Dong came up with a few words and asked loudly. If the receiving party is also the warehouse of a company, and they happen to have purchased a batch of the same goods, I'm afraid we can't tell. Jiang Xianer said immediately. Manager Dong's face was almost the same color as the ripe tomato. Manager Dong, since the misunderstanding is over, why don't you sit down and have a meal? Although it's an employee restaurant, I think it tastes good. Jiang Xianer walked over with a kind expression on his face. No, Manager Dong waved his hands awkwardly, with a polite smile on his face. Don't be so troublesome. It's all right. I'll pour you a glass of juice. Jiang Xian's son smiled more and more sincerely. And I also want to ask you why he didn't deliver it on the 18th. He didn't come to us on the 19th, but didn't come until the 28th. Manager Dong's smile froze on his face. I just saw in the contract that the penalty for breach of contract is 5% per day. Does Manager Dong think that 15% is not enough and that it must be 10-5%? Manager Dong's face was no longer red, but turned pale. Manager Dong, I think Shengtian Group is also a big business. It's not going to cheat on a business. Even if something goes wrong and is solved in time, it can still cooperate friendly in the future. If you do too well, it will be difficult to cooperate in the future, but after all, Shengtian Group can eat well in Daidu. Personally, I think President Chu's popularity is okay. So it shouldn't fall down. Manager Dong's cold sweat flowed down from his forehead. Jiang Shener's meaning has been obvious. If he goes against Shengtian Group, he will have no business in the whole imperial capital. That is indeed a dead end for a company like Manager Dong. Jiang, Miss Jiang. Manager Dong wiped the sweat on his head. As soon as he was about to say something, he heard a thick male voice behind him. Why did the guest come to the third floor directly? Manager Dong. Why don't you go upstairs and talk to me? Chu Tianxuan stood there in his spare time, his eyes slipping from Jiang Shener's body. He took Manager Dong away. As soon as Jiang Shener was about to return to his position, he heard someone greet her from behind. Assistant Jiang. I'm Xiao Wang from the marketing department. Can I meet you? For a time, Jiang Shener was surrounded by people. You're doing well, although you're not very good at pouring coffee. When Chu Tianxuan said this, Jiang Shener's face wore a shy smile and half bowed his head. Accompany me to an event tonight. Ah? Jiang Xian's son was stunned. You just stand by my side and smile gracefully at the camera. Chu Tianxuan said. But that night, facts proved that Chu Tianxuan underestimated Jiang Shener again. I'll go to the bathroom. This is a fashion show. The organizer is Chu Tianxuan's Shengtian Group, but Chu Tianxuan is not responsible for it. He just sat down with other presidents who came to the fashion show and persuaded them to invest with him. Jiang Shener came out of the bathroom and walked around. But she couldn't find the way back under the stage. However, the disturbance on one side attracted her attention. A woman wrapped in a blanket fell to the ground, her face swollen and red. Call an ambulance. Aside, a man who looked like a supervisor ordered. What happened? Is this man a model? Jiang Shener subconsciously walked over and asked. Well, yes, she's the model for the finale, but she seems to have had an emergency and suddenly fainted. The supervisor looked anxious and worried. It should be an allergy. Jiang Shener frowned and looked at the painful girl on the ground. She remembered that one of her classmates was allergic to peanuts in college, just like now. Allergies? The supervisor was stunned. Yes. Now you find someone to block the scene and check the suspicious personnel. After all, at this time, the model won't eat anything he hasn't eaten before, resulting in his own allergy, right? Jiang Shener suddenly had an idea. After all, when she followed Chu Tianxuan just now, she looked at those who cast covetous eyes on them. In her heart, she had an ominous premonition. Well, yes. The supervisor pondered, as if what he said was really reasonable. I suspect someone deliberately gave her something, which led to her allergy. So you'd better block the scene first, and then check the monitoring to see if there are any suspicious people entering the model's dressing room. Okay. The supervisor immediately arranged for someone to go. There's something wrong with this model. Is there a substitute? Jiang Shener asked again. After all, this is a finale model. No, a man who looked like a designer replied with a sad face. She was arranged to wear the final clothes, and the designer introduced her. Can't you change to another model? Jiang Xianer asked suspiciously. No, no, but the size will be changed. It will take some time, but now all the models are on the stage. The designer frowned and said. Well, isn't something going to happen? Jiang Xianer realized the seriousness of the matter. Well, yes, so. Miss Jiang. Shall we contact President Chu? The designer seems to know that Jiang Xianer is Chu Tianxuan's assistant. Jiang Xianer hesitated. If this kind of thing should be handled by Chu Tianxuan himself. A bold idea suddenly struck her. You can change the size of your clothes now. Can't you? She looked at the designer. Yes, because it's the design of cloak and skirt, not ordinary clothes, so it's easy to change. The designer looked at Jiang Xianer suspiciously. She didn't know what she had in mind. Then change the size to mine. Jiang Xianer said. What? What? The designer was stunned. Anyway, no one is playing now, so I'm on. Jiang Xianer said, however, I'm not a model, so I don't need you to introduce this dress. You just tell me the introduction of the dress, design concept and so on. Jiang Xianer nodded to the designer and said quickly. Trust me, no problem. Good. The designer also nodded hard, and then took Jiang Xianer into the fitting room. Fortunately, Jiang Xianer joined the model team in the university for several months. But she never appeared because of her height. After all, compared with those women who are 1.8 meters tall. Jiang Xianer who is 1.68 meters tall. It's too short. Miss Jiang, just wear it like this. The designer soon changed the size. Jiang Xianer looked at himself in the mirror. His beautiful back was completely exposed. He could even see the edge of his hips, which was unspeakably sexy. Although the chest is tightly wrapped, the design of lotus leaves and folds highlights her fullness. Especially when she walked, her white thighs loomed between her skirts, and her beautiful and slender ankles were exposed when she stood. Jiang Xianer felt that he was almost fascinated by himself. Next, we will have our final surprise. As the flagship work of Shengtian clothing brand this year, what kind of image is it? The host excitedly mobilized the audience's emotions on the stage. 18 models were divided into 2 rows and chased the light at the exit of the stage. Everyone was looking forward to the appearance of the last model. Jiang Xianer took a deep breath and went up the steps. The flash lights up crazily. Jiang Xianer can't see clearly under the stage, and even can't open his eyes. So she lowered her head a little and walked slowly from the stage. There is no model that is too tall and straight, but Jiang Xianer walks generously and takes every step just right. Her beautiful image is more moving than the models on the stage. If the model is appreciated, Jiang Xianer is love. Under the stage, Chu Tianxuan, sitting in the first row, stood up. Jiang Xianer walked to the front of the stage and stood still. She could finally see clearly under the stage. Her eyes slowly turned around and finally stopped on Chu Tianxuan. After that, Jiang Xian's son stretched out a hand slightly enchanting. The flash lights up again. All the light hit Jiang Xianer. Everyone under the stage looked at her and even held their breath. Everyone wanted to come forward and hold the weak boneless hand. Chu Tianxuan was stunned. Then he quickly reacted, stepped forward to the stage and took Jiang Xianer's hand in his own hand. He looked at Jiang Xianer affectionately. His eyes were full of love, a standard textbook boyfriend's face. Jiang Xianer's expression, however, changed from pretending to be charming to some surprise, followed by moving and affectionate gazing. The audience burst into applause. Hello, I'm Jiang Shener. Jiang Shener picked up the microphone. She didn't introduce her identity and didn't know how to introduce her. But the hand she was held by Chu Tianxuan has explained everything. It's a great honor to wear the clothes designed by Shengtian Group and walk on this stage. Jiang Shener's voice is very gentle, with a little intoxicating charm. Applause broke out again. This dress is designed by a German designer. About the design concept. Sorry, I don't quite understand. Jiang Shener looked at the audience candidly, and President Huang's eyes. But I know there is a story behind this dress. She paused. Then lowered her head and wiped the corners of her eyes with one hand. The German designer, when he was young, once visited the imperial capital and met a beautiful girl. Jiang Shener began to tell the story in a sad voice. While Chu Tianxuan stood aside and looked at her with loving eyes. This girl is very beautiful. She studies ballet and her dream is to be a ballet dancer. They soon fell in love. Like all love stories, the two people went from acquaintance to love, and then to marriage. So the German architect went to see the girl's parents with the girl. The girl's home is in the countryside, a very poor place. They want high betrothal gifts to let the girl live in the countryside safely, have children and take care of her brothers. However, the German designer guy, his works have not been known by the world, so he has no money and can't afford a house in China. So the two men had to part helplessly. The designer begged the girl to wait for him for another year. But success will not come so easily. After the designer returned to Germany, it took 2 years to make his works famous. So he came back to China with money and a ballet master to find the girl. He wanted to help his beloved fulfill his dream and become a ballet dancer. But when he came to the girl's house, everything in front of him discouraged him. The girl has long been forced by her family to marry a woman. Just the first month after the designer returned home, the girl has married the son of another rich family in the countryside. She has 2 children now. Her eldest son is 2 years old and her youngest son is half a year old. The designer looked at the woman he once loved and loved from a distance, carrying a child on his back and another child in his arms, doing farm work in the field. He tried to ask the girl, "I can take you away and realize your dream as a ballet dancer. I can raise you a child as long as you like." But the girl refused. She couldn't give up her children. She said that her body has become fat, because she has a baby, her body has long gone out of shape. And she can't dance ballet anymore. The designer is very sad. He doesn't know what to do is the best result for this girl. The girl is not the girl of that year, but the designer still couldn't help asking, "Do you love the man you are now?" The girl seemed stunned. But she couldn't answer the designer's question for a moment. The girl tightened the sleeping child in her arms and said faintly, "Love and non-love are no longer important. I have no dream now. Living is just for these 2 children." When the girl finished, she left step by step with her child in her arms. She never looked back at the designer. The designer kept looking at the direction of the girl's departure and had mixed feelings in her heart. So, after the designer went back sad, he began to devote himself to the design again and finally designed this dress. Jiang Shener finished, paused, motioned the people to focus on the clothes she was wearing, and continued, "The idea of this dress is designed for those who don't have a good figure, but still have a dream. This is a story with a tragic end. But the designer put all his love and thoughts for the girl on this dress. So I also believe that anyone who wears this dress will get the unwavering love of his lover." Jiang Shener's face was full of longing. It can give people confidence and beauty. And let everyone be their own angel. The audience burst into applause, and the light of the flash hit Jiang Xianer's confident face one by one, making her unique, elegant and beautiful. Because of Jiang Xianer's emotional introduction, the atmosphere under the stage has been brought to a climax. Even the designers, who have been worried that Jiang Xianer will play an abnormal role, can't help but begin to admire Jiang Xianer secretly. Who said that a beautiful woman must be a vase? Jiang Xianer is really an assistant to the president. She solved her crisis so easily. Chu Tianxuan, who has been standing beside Jiang Xianer, never left Jiang Xianer from beginning to end. Seeing that Jiang Xianer told the story vividly, and Jiang Xianer's yearning for true love, Chu Tianxuan had a different understanding of Jiang Xianer, so he had to look at her with new eyes. Chu Tianxuan wants to dismiss Jiang Xianer's heart. He starts to shake again. Can this rash ghost really change? Jiang Xianer nearby didn't know that Chu Tianxuan was thinking of dismissing herself. She looked back and saw Chu Tianxuan looking at herself with an inquisitive face. She couldn't help asking in a confused whisper, "What's the matter? President Chu? What's wrong?" After all, it's still on the stage. It's not good for people to see them whispering. Jiang Xianer thought that Chu Tianxuan had been busy with the meeting. He was tired and asked with concern. Chu Tianxuan quickly took back his thoughts. The embarrassment flashed on his face and said faintly, "It's all right." Jiang Xianer, accompanied by the flash, plays countless poses, smiling at the camera all the time. Although she is not a professional model, because her facial features are very good-looking and generous, she makes the people under the stage feel very fresh and unique. With the change of music, Jiang Xianer walked down the stage step by step. She knew it was time for her to leave the stage. Chu Tianxuan naturally took her hand and led her to the stage step by step, acting very gentlemanly. Because of Chu Tianxuan's identity and his too close interaction with Jiang Xianer, the audience began to guess their relationship, which attracted more attention. After Jiang Xianer stepped down, Chu Tianxuan directly let go of Jiang Xianer's hand. Where did he just look a little affectionate? Jiang Xianer secretly spits out his tongue. President Chu is really a cold and impermanent person. Chu Tianxuan pursed his mouth and finally said stiffly, "You did well today." Seeing Chu Tianxuan's rare and unprecedented boast of himself, Jiang Xianer immediately danced happily, naturally took Chu Tianxuan's hand and asked excitedly, "Really? This is the first time you have praised me?" Looking at the hand held by others, Chu Tianxuan felt that he really shouldn't have said those words to Jiang Xianer just now. "Let go." Chu Tianxuan glanced at his hand. Jiang Xianer just reflected that he was so happy that he didn't hold back for a moment. He quickly put down and took Chu Tianxuan's hand. Looking at Chu Tianxuan's dark face, Jiang Xianer smiled awkwardly, "Sorry, I'm too excited." Chu Tianxuan is speechless and looks at the sky. This rash go still doesn't depend on the situation. He'd better quit. The show ended successfully after Jiang Xianer was the finale. At this time, the designer in charge of model clothes came over with a dignified face. "President Chu, there's something." The designer glanced at Jiang Xianer and was embarrassed. It seemed that he didn't know whether Jiang Xianer should know. Chu Tianxuan took a look at Jiang Xianer and didn't say anything. He just said quietly, "Say it." When the designer got the promise, he said, "Assistant Jiang asked me to investigate the sudden allergy of the model. I have news."